Namaste. Good morning. The light and love of the divine in me honors and greets the light and love of the divine in all of you here this morning. Big shout out and thank you to Steve Kendall, who is our man on the job with everything that's going on here with our Zoom gathering this morning. Ron is in Hawaii. So we bless Ron and know that he's having a wonderful time, and we give our full thanks and gratitude to Steve for stepping up this morning. Thank you for that. Well, that's what we do here. We are the Awakening Ways spiritual community, and we follow in the lineage of Dr. Ernest Holmes. And this is a new thought teaching, and new thought teachings are, I had someone ask me the other day, this is what happens in foundations, where we say at the end of foundations, you should be able to explain to a stranger what this teaching is all about. In 25 words or less. Well, that can be a challenge. And as a teacher, I have to say that I was caught off guard. The woman who asked me what the teaching was all about was a former nun. And so I was couching my words carefully, when really all I wanted to say, and what I eventually did say, was that this is a teaching about love. This is a teaching that believes that there's only one God, one power, one presence, and that it is in all of us just equally. I did mention to her, I said, because I knew that she was Catholic, I said, we believe that like Jesus, we all are sons and daughters of the divine, not just one of us. We don't think that Jesus is the great example. The great exception. We believe that he is the great example. And it brought to my awareness how important it is for us sometimes to just think about what this teaching is all about and how it expands our spiritual horizons, and it allows us to live a life of freedom and joy and happiness, because we get to know that presence that we call God is in us fully. Always. That wisdom, that joy, that love is always in us fully, 100% of the time. And we get to take that out and allow it to express out in our world, with people that we meet, with situations that we encounter. And the role of Awakening Ways is to kind of bring forth those teachings, bring forth those opportunities to learn how to live like this. And we offer classes, and we offer workshops, and we offer meditations, and we offer prayers. We offer Sunday gatherings and music, and so many ways for us as individuals to connect with that big R reality of the big L life. So we hope that you will continue to come here on Sundays and allow yourselves to expand and grow just in the energy that we gather up here on Sundays, but that you also consider dipping your toes into perhaps reading a book by Ernest Holmes, or taking a class that we offer here, so that you can expand your experiences and deepen your own life experiences as well. So whatever it was that brought you here this morning, and wherever you go when you leave here, for this perfect, sweet, precious moment in time, welcome home. We've been waiting for you. This morning, we are blessed to have Susan Jones as our guest speaker. Susan is a wise woman, and we always grow and expand and deepen in love when Susan speaks. So we're looking forward to that. And before we get into that, I'd like to begin with just a little meditation. I always like to share words from Ernest Holmes, and then lead us in an opening prayer. Oops.
Right here.
I can't find my glasses. Here we go. So if you will, just allow your eyes to softly close. if you're comfortable with that. And just settle into your chair. It's so comfy being at home, isn't it? And just nestle in. Take a deep, 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 full breath, filling the lungs fully and completely, and hold it right at the top for just a moment. And then let it out fully. And if you'd like, you can take another one. Full, deep, rich breath, hold at the top, and then let it out completely. And then just feel your body relaxing. Feel yourself fully present. Mind relaxed, heart open, body relaxed, ready to hear these words from Dr. Ernest Holmes. He says the natural order of evolution has brought us to a place where there is a quickening of the spirit, a keener perception of the mind, a deeper introspection of the soul. The veil between spirit and matter is thinning. We are emerging into a spiritual universe, proclaimed alike by the philosopher, the religionist, the scientist, and the idealist. And yet the nature of reality, our ultimate truth, cannot be changed. 2 and 2 were 4 1,000,000 years ago. The true awakening is to the one mind and the one spirit. And so right here and right now, we awaken. We awaken to the awareness of that one mind, that one spirit that is in, around, and through us all this morning. This morning and every morning, this moment and every moment, for we cannot be separate from that one mind, that one spirit. And so we open wide the doors of our consciousness and we say yes to that awareness, yes to that feeling of connection, that knowingness, that we are part of that infinite and divine wholeness that spirit is. And we move in that energy together this morning. We know that Susan, as she speaks those divine words of inspiration that move directly into our hearts and minds, that lift us higher and take us deeper. We know that the music and the vibrations of the music just allow us to be in tune with that infinite harmony of the spheres. We know just being together is amazing. We can feel each other's presence right here and right now. And we know that most definitely and most surely it is all God, all the time. And so giving thanks for this moment and for everything that is on its way, I just let it all go. I let it all be. And knowing it so, I simply say, and so it is. Amen.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here with all of you beloveds. Thank you ahead of time for your love. This is our last Sunday for the Seed of Awakening life. And so, of course, I had to start thinking about, well, what is the world, or like I would call it the collective consciousness, what does the world tell us about life? Well, the world tells us that life is hard. Life's not fair. They tell us to live life to the fullest. They tell us you only live once, so make the most of it. They tell us that life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. I love that one. So, what did your family tell you about life? My dad told me that our family motto was, I've got mine. Now, think about that for a minute. What kind of a message is that to give to a kid? I've got mine. But then on the other hand, my mom would always say, enjoy it while it lasts, because eventually the other shoe is going to drop. So there's another message about life that was put into my brain when I was a little kid. When you're little, your parents spend a lot of time teaching you how to be fair. If there's 3 kids and there's 3 cookies, then everybody gets one because that's fair. And so you work and work on learning how to be fair until the day that you come home from school and maybe one kid did something wrong and everybody lost recess privileges. And you tell your mom and dad, that's not fair. And they look at you and say, well, whoever told you life is fair? Life's not fair. It's crazy. So as I was thinking about writing this talk, and I was on a walk, taking a little walk, and in my neighborhood, this song popped in my head. What's it all about, Alfie? Remember that song? And the first line is, what's it all about, Alfie? Is it just for the moment we live? Again, the world, the collective consciousness gives us such mixed messages about that. On the one hand, we're supposed to seize the day and live for the moment. But on the other hand, we're supposed to work hard and save for our retirement. So I started thinking so what is the meaning of life? Well, there were some guys who were sitting around and they were having that exact conversation. So one turned to the other and he said, if tomorrow all of your loved ones were gathered around your casket at your funeral, what would you want them to say about you? Well, the first man said, I would like them to say that I was a really good husband and a wonderful father. And the second guy said, well, I would like them to say that I worked really hard and I made a really good living, but I was also very generous. And the third guy said, well, I would want them to say, look, he's moving. So in Douglas Adams' wonderful comedic science fiction book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything was posed to a supercomputer whose name was Deep Thought, which spent 7.5 million years pondering this question, only to come up with the answer, the number 42. I think Adams was trying to show us how fruitless and silly it is to spend a lot of time pondering the meaning of life when life is in front of you and all around you. All you have to do is go outside. So I think it's really interesting that God arranged it so that the most formative years of our lives, from birth to 5 or 6 years old, we are basically in the hands, or I could say at the mercy, of others. As a practitioner, I've worked with so many people who are living their present life based on decisions that they made as a child or beliefs that they assumed that were basically given to them by others. You're lazy, you're dumb, you're worthless, you're a burden. I wondered, what's the point of, why did God do that? Why is that? When I started thinking, maybe it's because our challenge is to rise above those beliefs and beyond that program that was given to us as a child. When we create our identity or our purpose or our reason for living based on what we do instead of how we be, then we're destined to feel loss when we aren't doing that anymore. If your life is based around being the CEO of a big company, and then you retire and you're not doing that anymore, then Who are you? What are you? You feel lost. People whose physical strength was part of their identity of what they did, and then they aren't feeling that strong anymore, lose their feeling of the meaning of life. A lot of people fear getting older because they think it means loss, loss of so many things, instead of rejoicing about all of the benefits, all the things that come to us: Social Security, Medicare, free tax preparation, and even being in the front of the COVID shot line. So when I used to think about the what is the meaning of life, for me, the most challenging season of life in our world was fall, because I used to always think that fall meant death. For me, when the leaves turned brown and they fell off, to me it meant that something was dying. And yet one time that whole thing changed for me, because I noticed that as the leaves were falling off of the tree, right behind it was a little bud for the next leaf. And I realized that fall was just really a transition from one form to another, and that it wasn't really about death at all. When a couple of years ago, my husband and I lived on a piece of property that had a perfect place for a dog yard. So we put the dog yard in, we fenced it off, and my husband wanted to put a tarp over the top to shield the dogs from the sun, but there were 2 trees in that yard. And so one day, without consulting me, he just chopped the tops of the trees off, and he left these 2 stumps that were about 4 feet tall in there. And, I was kind of horrified about that at first, but over time, I started seeing that on the trunks of these stumps started coming little sprouts. And before you know it, over time, they turned into these perfect bushes, tree bushes. And I used to go out there and I would just laugh when I saw that, because I would just think, I could just imagine God saying, yeah, bring your chainsaw, buddy. Like, let's see what you can do. And then see if you can stop me. And God says, no, you cannot stop me. So those leaves just came out. When I was a little kid, my grandma had a live-in housekeeper named Katie. She was a Quaker, and she was very religious, but also just very present, she was just a very amazing woman. And she used to tell us Bible stories all the time and talk to us about God and about Jesus. And one time, I was about 7, she was telling us that God made everything, and that every single thing has a purpose. So I thought, being the little smarty pants that I was, that I would challenge her. So I said, well, Katie, if everything has a purpose, then why did God make flies? And without even taking a breath, Katie looked at me and she said, God made flies so that when we were done eating, we would cover up our food and put it away in the refrigerator. And you know what? I looked at her and I went, well, that makes total sense. So there's a purpose and a meaning for everything, even flies. I learned that when I was 7. I have a dear, dear friend who has 2 amazing daughters who went through a very incredible experience last year. One of her daughters was in need of a new liver because hers was failing. And so her sister said, I will donate part of my liver to you. And they went through a surgery of taking 2/3 of one girl's liver and putting it into the body of the other girl, the other sister. And the most amazing thing happened. It even surprised the surgeon that was doing the surgery, was that the very moment that he placed the sister's donated liver into the other sister and hooked up the connections, it started working immediately. This is not exactly what always happens, but this surgeon was just blown away. This life force was so strong that this liver just started doing its job in front of the doctor's eyes. Incredible. And Ernest Holmes has something to say about that. He says, there is an insistent and intelligent urge in the life principle that impels it to express. I'm going to just say it again. There is an insistent and intelligent urge in the life principle that impels it to express. It impelled those leaves to come out of those stumps. It impelled that liver to just start working immediately. God is proof of life. All we have to do is go outside and look. So another thing that Ernest Holmes has to say about life is, and this is really key, this one came through to me from Spirit as actually like what Spirit wanted me to say. And that is, the purpose for which we were created is to express the nature of the divine, the source of our being. The purpose for which we were created is to express the nature of the divine, the source of our being. During this past year or so, I've been involved in some ministerial training with Dr. Frank, and part of that training has been to study the Bible. And one of our textbooks is this book called The Hidden Mystery of the Bible by Jack Addington. And he lays out some keys to understanding sort of the deeper metaphysical meanings in the Bible. And the first key that he tells us about, it has to do with the meaning of proper names. And he says that actually the word name means nature in the Bible. Isn't that a great idea? So, for example, in the book of John, Jesus says, "And I have declared to them your name and will declare it, that the love with which you loved me may be in them and I in them." So how sweet it is when we substitute the word nature for the word name. "And I have declared to them your nature and will declare it, that the love with which you loved me may be in them and I in them." That changed my whole perspective when I read the Bible, whenever I hear anyone say, "In the name of the Lord," or "In the name of Jesus," and I substitute that word nature, it's accessible to me. It feels like I'm part of that, and I am part of that. Years and years ago, I used to volunteer at the juvenile hall in San Luis Obispo. And I used to do mock job interviews with the kids, one-on-one. We would be in actually a locked room, and I would pretend to be an employer and I would ask them questions. And one of the things I always did was, because I wanted to know kind of more about them, so I would ask them, first question, "Tell me about the worst teacher you ever had." And most of those kids would look at me and say, "There were so many that I can't even think of one. Like, I can't." So then I would ask, "Well, then tell me about your favorite teacher." And the name came out of their mouths. It just flowed out of their mouths. It was Mrs. Brown or, Mr. Black. It was just the teacher's name just flew out of their mouth. And so I would say to them, "Well, then tell me, why was that person your favorite teacher?" And they would always say, "Because they listened to me, they saw me, they heard me, they believed in me. They didn't believe what they were told about me, that I was a bad kid, that I was trouble. They believed in the good in me." These kids, they all said that. It just shows you that their answers had nothing to do with the vocation of being a teacher, like, "Oh, he was the best woodworking person I ever worked with," or "That person, had doctorate degrees from Harvard." That didn't make a bit of difference. It was the way that the teacher was being with that child. And I'll bet you that right now, each person listening to me could tell me about their favorite teacher. It's just, they stick with you. My favorite teacher was Mrs. Childs. She was my 7th and 8th grade English teacher, or they used to call it language arts back then. And when I was in 8th grade, on one particular rainy day, I decided that I was going to wear my brown corduroy pants and my brown loafers and my orange and brown sweater to school. And I did that. And minutes after I walked onto the campus, I was pulled into the office. My mom was called by the principal and asked to come and bring me a dress. Because when I was in 8th grade, girls weren't allowed to wear pants to school. I know that sounds crazy, but I also know a lot of you guys know that that's true. For whatever reason, we were not allowed to wear pants. So as I was lamenting this to my English teacher, Mrs. Childs, she said to me, you know, there's a way to make change in the world. And if you want to know about it, I'm happy to help you with that. And so she talked to me about writing articles for the school newspaper about how I felt about the dress code. And she also encouraged me to put together a petition and get students and adults to sign the petition, which I did. And by the time I graduated from 8th grade, the dress code had changed and girls were allowed to wear pants to school. Now, Mrs. Childs, I'm 66 years old, almost, and Mrs. Childs is as close to me in my mind as anything that happened to me a minute ago. And that's because she heard me. She honored me. She valued what I thought. She could have, you know, in 1967 or whenever that was, she could have just looked at me and said, look, you know, don't buck the system. It is what it is. Keep your head down and keep moving. She didn't do that. And because of the way that she was with me, the beingness that she was with me, she changed my life. You know, I have done many other things like that in 8th grade where I have gone about making change and I've been successful doing that. And it's because of Mrs. Childs. Amazing. So in this very sweet book, I'm going to hold it up, The Prayer That God Prays. This is so sweet. This book is written by Jim Rosemergy. He said that Spirit told him, your life is the prayer I pray. Spirit said to him, your life is the prayer I pray. You are the prayer that God prays. You know, Rosemergy says, as God continues to pray, our family and our friends will note a joy and a gentleness about us. Our relationships with others become genuinely loving because we need nothing from them when we know ourselves to be whole. So the question isn't, what is the meaning of life? The question is, who is the meaning of life? And the answer is you. You are the meaning of life. You are the prayer that God prays. Again, Ernest said, the purpose for which we were created is to express the nature of the divine, the source of our being. While in practitioner training, we were asked to create a list of all of the attributes of God and to keep adding to the list as we experienced more of them. The lists got longer and longer and longer as we worked on this. So what if we described ourselves and what we do with an answer describing an attribute of God instead of my name is Susan Jones, and I'm semi-retired, and I do some volunteer work, and I'm involved in my church. What if we just answered, I am peace. I am perfect health. I am love. You know, you might think that people would think this was weird, but I actually had an experience with this years ago, probably 15 years ago. I was in a workshop on trauma-informed care. I was a foster parent then, and we were learning how to deal with people who've been traumatized in their lives and how their brains work when they are feeling triggered. And so one of the exercises was to get us to feel triggered, like to feel that fight or flight response in our brains. So they asked us to pick somebody in the audience that we didn't know and pair up, stand very close to one another, and say something, take turns saying something to the other person that you wouldn't say normally to a person that you didn't know. So I paired up with this lovely woman who I didn't know. And when it was my turn, again, I'm sure Spirit was doing this. It wasn't my mortal mind, but I just looked at her and I said, I believe that I am one with all of life and that my purpose here is to love. And she looked at me and her eyes blinked a couple of times. Her eyes got kind of teary. And she just reached over and she just hugged me. And we just hugged each other. Now, this was not the point of the exercise. All the other people around us were giggling nervously because they were feeling that fight or flight. But what I know is that being an attribute of the divine just brings good. It just brings love. It brings that connection, that feeling of oneness. So again, why did the divine have me think of that song? What's it all about, Alfie? So, you know, I had to Google the song because I didn't remember all of it. The last lines in the song is, I believe in love, Alfie. Without true love, we just exist. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing and achieving great things. That's what makes our lives fun and interesting. But the real meaning of our lives is not in what we do, it's how we be. It's the vibration that we walk in. The beauty about this is that anyone can do this regardless of their age or their achievements. So I invite you to choose an attribute of the divine and be it. You know, you can choose something different every day because the list is endless. In fact, if you want, you could wake up and choose to be an attribute of the divine that's kind of the opposite of how you're feeling. If you're feeling a little sad, choose to be joy for the day. If you're feeling a little sickly or, you know, down in that way, you can choose perfect health as the attribute to embody for the day. The attributes of the divine neutralize any negativity or anything that we wish to remove from our experience. So what I'd like to do to end this talk today is to do a prayer treatment on this very thing. So if you would, take a moment and just feel yourself seated in the chair where you're sitting or wherever you are. Just take a moment and feel that support that is beneath your feet, beneath your body, knowing that that support is the divine. Because there's only one life, there's only one creator, there's only one source of everything. That includes the very chair that you're sitting in. That includes me, and that includes each and every one of us. That divine creator, that presence, created each one of us and impressed into each one of us every magnificent quality of itself. All of the attributes of the divine live in us, in the very cells of our body, in our minds, in our hearts. They're just right there, and they're so accessible. And I declare right here and now that each person listening to my words is that, is peace, is perfect health, is love, is grace, is wisdom. All of these amazing, wonderful qualities vibrating in, through, from each and every one of us. I give thanks for this world populated by these divine beings, bringing forth that light of love, that light of peace, that light of grace and wisdom, because I know that this is the meaning of life. I know that this changes the trajectory of humanity. This I know for sure. And I give thanks for it. I give thanks for every wonderful being willing to put aside their mortal minds and just be the divine. What a gift this is. What a blessing. I know that my words are powerful, and I know that my words have moved the law and that the demonstration has been achieved. I give thanks for this, and I know that it is so. And together we say, and so it is. Namaste.
I need to thank everybody for being here this morning. And especially Susan. You know, Susan is such a bright light. I'm so overjoyed to have her as a ministerial student. She's been a practitioner here almost since the beginning of Awakening Ways, and now she's gone into the ministerial program, and she's doing just an incredible job. We really owe her a vote of thanks for this morning, and I know she's going to be great. I want to thank everybody who has continued to contribute to Awakening Ways, even though we're closed down here in terms of being able to see one another in person. It has been a bad time for a lot of people. A lot of churches have suffered because of the COVID. Financially, we don't seem to have suffered that much. We've had a little shortfall, but it's not as much as a lot of people would have expected, and we're paying all of our bills, and we're moving along. We really haven't had to pull a lot of money out of our bank account to pay for things because we've been bringing in the money to pay for it. So we appreciate it. Please keep it up, because you're the reason we're able to be here. Your gifts, your energy, your finances, all the things that you give Awakening Ways, so that Awakening Ways can give back. I want to remind you that we pray for people. I mean, that's the most important part of our ministry. All of us who are here on the practitioner corps and the ministers, our main function is to pray. And so if you have anything that you need prayer for, or you have a family member, someone you know that needs prayer, if your pet needs prayer, it doesn't matter, because we pray for any being, any sentient being, as long as they're okay with it. And what we know about animals is that dogs and cats are always okay with prayer, because they're completely open consciousness. They're just amazing consciousnesses. So if you have a request for prayer, please send it to Awakening Ways. Email it to us at awakeningways.org. And in the subject column, in the subject line, just put in prayer request. And then let us know what the prayer is for, who it's for, and we'll be happy to do that for you for a week. And then if you need it some more, then you turn in another prayer request. Easy peasy. A reminder that next week, I'm going to be back speaking. It's been about 3 weeks now since I've been here. And that Jan Lynch's workshop in the Living in the Divine Flow, May 12th and 19th, it still has 3 spots available. So if you plan on signing up and you haven't done it yet, now is the time to do it before those seats go. So just call the office and sign up, or send an email to the office to sign up, and go to PayPal, pay for it, mail in the check, whatever, because if you want to hold the seat, you're going to need to go ahead and pay for it. It's I believe $45. And I don't have that right in front of me, but I think that's what it is. And it's going to be 2 weeks in the evenings on Wednesday evenings. So contact Jan. She has the books, and she'll be able to give you all the rest of the information. And you can do that through the office. And I think that's it. That's all. I want to thank everybody who participated today, especially Steve and Susan. And if you're ready, let's just do a benediction and we'll call it a day. Okay. Let's just close our eyes for a moment. I know that we have been blessed with life. We have been blessed with life in the most outrageous way. For truly, that which is divine is in us, guiding, guarding, and protecting us at all times. Everything we are, everything we do is that divine. It is such a blessing that as we go forth from here today, we go forth as that divine, having a living experience, being that prayer that God prays. That's our job. Let's do that. This week, let's be the prayer that God prays, that we may lift life, lift the world, and lift ourselves into the highest realms of the Most High. We are so blessed. And so it is.